community, we will take into consideration before we make any permanent changes. So those are the two that I've got for you. Happy to answer any questions on either of those items.
Yeah, thank you. Particularly on the traffic calming, I've received a handful of emails. I guess what I want to say is, and I'm sure we're doing it, but just folks to know that the traffic calming measures that we see out there today are a result of lengthy conversations that we've had with the neighborhood, dating back, even pre-pandemic, when we would meet at the hub there on Soto, where the community members were concerned. They wanted us to reduce speeding. They wanted us to reduce reckless driving. They wanted us to reduce sideshows, and those were, to be quite honest, they were very angry conversation. I mean, people were mad. And so what the traffic calming measures that you see out there today are a result of that. We're not done implementing all of them. And, and so I understand there's a lot of people upset. But there was also a lot of people at those meetings asking us to do something. And so anyways, I know we're testing this, and if we can continue to collect data, and I'm sure we are, that we can share that data with the neighborhood in months out.
We absolutely are, and we absolutely will.
Thank you. Okay. Okay. With that, I'd like to move on to consent calendar. I've been asked to pull item 10, and wanted to see if anybody had anything to pull.
No, I just wanted to also make a comment on 10.
Okay. Okay, so before we vote, let me open it for public comment. I'll ask Mr. Faria to come up and make a public comment on item 10.
Good morning, Council. Good evening, Council and Mayor. I'm here today to speak on behalf of the historic City Hall building just around the corner from us here. When it was built in 1930, there was a mere only 5,000 Hayward residents in Hayward. This is a centerpiece of the Hayward city and the amazing history that has grown around that building. Everything that the city has accomplished has come from that building. I really appreciate having that building for future generations to come. I understand there's been vandalism inside the building with some homeless issues and fires and such, but I think we should also take some safeguards in the future. I know the homeless population is growing, especially in our city. It should be doubled in a couple of years from now, but we should put some safeguards in place, a burglar alarm, something to keep it safe, to keep everyone else safe. I would really appreciate seeing this grow into maybe a Hayward Historical Society office in the future where families could go there, learn about Hayward, go to the Rotary Park next door, enjoy the area. I just don't, and me being the current chair of Hayward Clean and Green Task Force and picking up a lot of garbage in the city, I don't want to see this demolished and put into a landfill. It's almost its 100-year anniversary we're going to be celebrating in about 5 years. I'd like to keep this for future generations to come, and I really appreciate you supporting maybe making this a state landmark in the future so everybody could enjoy it beyond generations to come. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. And then we also have a caller online, TJ from Hayward Concerned Citizens. Go ahead.
Hello. Yes, TJ again. I appreciate what my colleague Tom had to say. Mine's probably a little more grounded in reality, but I really appreciate all his words. I read a couple of detailed articles about Old City Hall in the Hayward Historical Society archives to get some perspective on this. And I also looked up some old city council meeting minutes on this subject from back in 1996, when a group called Friends of the Historic City Hall advocated for its preservation and wanted to explore grants, retrofitting, and development of a historical landmark. Unfortunately, there was no viable pathway to preserve it then, and now, over 40 years later, this building's fate remains in stasis. Over the years, it has been made clear that there is no money to restore the building to its former glory, nor is it safe to occupy or tour it. And yet, you're suggesting in the staff report that while you're putting a patch or two on this building, in all likelihood, it will ultimately be demolished anyway. It seems to me it's often the case that our taxpayer money goes toward little pieces of repair and refresh rather than rebuilding and replacing, as is the case with Weeks Branch Library and Hayward PD, for example. In this particular situation, I just don't see the point to doing something now that should have been done in 1996 if it was the intention to preserve Old City Hall. It certainly would have delayed the inevitable sad state it's become. And unfortunately, our council will continue to say that any funds the city does have will be earmarked for other infrastructure projects that hold a higher priority in the here and now. The Historical Society has done a wonderful job preserving this architecturally unique structure in photos and written material, but it saddens me to look at Old City Hall and reflect on what could have been had there been a greater collaborative effort. To quote future California Governor James Rolfe at the groundbreaking in 1930 at that time, quote, "A city hall is more than a building. It is a substantial expression of civic pride and confidence. I have no doubt but that Hayward's structure will be representative of a successful progressive community." Thank you.
Thank you. And you know, just a little factoid about the old city hall. The mayor of Livermore, John Marchand, his father used to be the chief of police of the city of Hayward, and it was Chief Marchand who was the last chief of that building that moved to the new building on West Winton. A little historical note. I say that because I know we have the police chief here sitting in the audience, and you know everyone knows Chief Marchand. But anyways, Councilmember Roach.
Oh, thanks. I didn't know there was going to be so much comment on this, but I just wanted to ask, one of the items in this, in the fixes we're talking about includes putting some doors on there that are potentially not glass, right? So we don't continue to have that vandalism. And my only ask is that they're slightly decorative because, right now there's just plywood on there, which is what we're trying to fix. But, because it is a historical monument, like to see something slightly decorative on there that doesn't look like, sort of fortress doors.
I think, we're making an effort to still make it, a place where folks can, somewhat photogenic, so that it's not, an eyesore.
Great.
It certainly, it pains me to see the eyesore that it has become, and so we'll do what we can to prevent that from happening again.
Yeah, but I really appreciate what you're doing. I mean, the staff report says that stairs are coming, apart from the wall. I mean, those are safety fixes for our firefighters that have to go into that building and potentially take care of, any vandalism that happens. So I think to the caller's point, these are actual safety issues for our first responders. So these things have to be done. These aren't sort of Band-Aids to continue going along in the future. So I appreciate what we're doing here. Thank you.
Okay. Seeing nothing else being pulled, I will, and I did public comment, closed public comment, came back up here to the dais, and I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move the consent calendar.
I'm happy to second.
Moved by Councilmember Roach, seconded by Councilmember Bonilla, and if there are no further questions, Madam City Clerk, if you can take a voice vote.
Yes, Mayor, since this is the consent calendar, if there are no objections.
Of course, and if there's no objections, it will pass unanimously. Thank you. Okay, moving on to work session item 13. It's the Let's House Hayward Strategic Plan, implementation update and discussion of next steps. And I believe I see Dr. Cole Bloom coming up to the dais. And I can only expect that this is going to be a great presentation. And 5 slides.
I almost couldn't figure out how to turn on the microphone to really start on a great note. This will be...
It will be both of those.
5 slides. All right. Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Amy Cole-Bloom. I manage the Community Services team. I'm here tonight to give you an update on the implementation of the Let's House Hayward strategic plan to reduce homelessness. Before I jump in, I do want to acknowledge that today, on winter solstice every year, we observe the National Homeless Persons Memorial Day. It's the longest night of the year and one of the coldest nights of the year, and I just want to acknowledge the work of the folks in the community who are supporting our unhoused neighbors, and just acknowledge that that day is observed today. All right, so a brief history. In 2020, Council adopted the first strategic roadmap, and it included one of its activities was to develop a strategic plan to reduce homelessness. That strategic plan was developed through extensive community, staff, and council engagement, and it was adopted as the Let's House Hayward strategic plan in July of 2021. It was adopted by council the same night that council adopted the American Rescue Plan Act federal stimulus expenditure plan, and these two are related. The vision is up here. It's an aspirational vision for the city of Hayward to be a leader in ensuring an end to homelessness by empowering individuals through accessible, dignified treatment and services. The plan has 3 overarching goals. I won't read them to you, but they are primarily around strategic partnerships and communication, homelessness response, homelessness prevention. The plan itself was intended to proactively position the city so that we can prepare for future funding, be agile and responsive. I say that because we'll discuss this a little bit more, but many of the activities in the plan are unfunded, and this was understood at the time of the adoption of the plan. It's a prioritization tool. It's a community-informed prioritization tool. There was a strategic committee that was made up of folks who work in the service space, developers, and people with lived experience. And so this is really a prioritization tool to make sure that we are responsive and agile when funding does become available. The staff report goes into a lot more detail on the alignment between Let's House Hayward and Council's current strategic roadmap as well. So we recently, like just last week, received the city's the city-specific point-in-time count data. We weren't able to go into specifics of the data in the staff report because of some timing constraints, but I wanted to share some highlights for you all tonight and go into a little bit of context. So first, a little bit about the point-in-time or PIT count. The U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD, requires a census count of people experiencing homelessness. It's a massive volunteer effort to do a visual count. Some of the folks on the dais were there back in January when we did the count on January 25th at about 5 a.m. A new element to the way the county did the PIT count this year that I want to highlight was that volunteers conducted interviews with everyone that they were counting who was willing to talk to them. This is different. In the past PIT counts, we only served folks who were in shelters. So this year, the PIT count data, it means that the demographic information we have this year is more informative. But it also means that we can't really compare this data, the demographic data, to prior years because the groups are meaningfully different. Prior data was just folks who were living in shelters, so transitional housing or emergency shelter. This year, it's folks who are living in shelters, but also those who are unsheltered, which means people who are living in a place that's not fit for human habitation. I want to highlight some of the data here. So the city's point-in-time count increased by 34%. That's from, in total, 381 folks in 2022 to 512 in 2024. This is primarily driven by a 105% increase in our sheltered count. So that means we had more people in shelter by over 100%. So that refers again to folks who are living in emergency shelter or transitional housing, as opposed to those who are living outdoors. The increase in the shelter count, we're doing some digging into this, working with our county partners to make sure we truly understand what the differences are. One of the big drivers of that is that between 2022 and 2024, a lot of our shelters ended the capacity restrictions related to COVID-19. So when COVID hit, all of our shelters had to really shrink down their capacity so that they could shelter, or they could social distance safely. Those restrictions ended. between the 22 and 2024 count, so that meant our shelters got to go back to full capacity. So for example, at our navigation center, that means we went from about 20 beds to 60 beds. Additionally, and we're still kind of doing some investigation into this with the county, but there was the inclusion of some shelter and transitional housing programs in the 2024 count that were not included in the 2022 count. So there are programs that we're still kind of trying to investigate where they were in 2022. They're not new shelters, but a lot of it has to do with programs that serve victims of domestic violence and intimate partner violence, where we very intentionally keep the locations secret. And so I think somewhere in there we may have had some confusion about where they actually were. I do also want to highlight some important takeaways and learnings about our unsheltered and sheltered community from this data. It's a common myth that in California, folks are homeless because it's warm here and because we have services here. In Alameda, in this count, 79% of the folks who were counted were Alameda County residents before they became homeless. And among those folks, 86% of them had been living in Alameda County for 10 or more years. So that means we don't have that for like city specific, but we know of the folks who are homeless in Hayward, almost all of them, 3/4 of them, were living in Alameda County before they became homeless. And most of them were homeless, were living in Alameda County for a long time before that. 25% are chronically homeless, which means they've been homeless for at least the last 12 months, or in some cases in intervals totaling 12 months, but that they've been homeless for a long time. We also see a really disproportionate representation among some racial groups, which is consistent with what we've seen in previous years. We know that systemic racism is part of what drives people into homelessness. Histories of discriminatory housing policies, economic constraints have forced people into homelessness who are at a higher rate for folks who are people of color than people who are white. And we see that again in our data. Additionally, we know from this new PIC count data that 20% of those who were interviewed reported having a serious mental illness, and 17% reported having a substance use disorder. I put a link in there, and I'm happy to share more information with the council on how to get to both the infographic that's specific to the city of Hayward, and then also a really comprehensive report on the total PIC count in the county. All right, so thank you for allowing me that segue from the staff report. But I wanted to highlight some of the successes of our Let's House Hayward strategic plan implementation. I'm not going to read all of these at you, but there's a lot more in the staff report, but we wanted to pull out some of the highlights. We continue to have really strong cross-departmental and cross-jurisdictional collaboration. It's strengthened between city staff, hard staff, school district staff, along with our internal meetings across departments, maintenance, city manager's office, code enforcement, HPD, fire. This is the point of this presentation where I express my appreciation to every single one of those departments for the work they do. We have continued the operation of the HEART program, which doesn't just serve folks who are homeless, but a lot of the folks they do serve are. I wanted to highlight that one because there's an attachment in your staff report that provides more data about the implementation of the HEART program. And I think there's some really exciting updates in there for you, so please take a look at that. I wanted to also highlight that we were awarded state home key funds to acquire up to, I think we ended up with 7 single-family homes in Hayward. Or sorry, 6 in Hayward. There you go. I'm looking, the executive director from Bay Area Community Services, Jamie Almanza, is here, so I'm looking for her to fact check me. 6 homes in Hayward, which provide permanent housing to up to 35 individuals, and that's through state home key money. The staff report goes more into detail regarding the projects that are on hold or behind schedule, but I do want to highlight that ongoing funding is still needed for many of the efforts in this plan. Over $9 million of the money that was authorized from the ARPA expenditure plan in 2021 was for projects that were in the Let's House Hayward strategic plan, and the majority of those funds have been spent. Many of the projects that are on hold or are listed as on track, but I've highlighted them as at risk of concluding because there's no funding in place, are listed up here. Safe parking and safe camping, we've done kind of an initial landscape analysis on safe parking, but haven't been able to move forward with that without additional funds. the strategic plan has an activity in it for a public education plan, and that hasn't been able to move anywhere because that would require funding. The year-round shelter and day center, that did happen. We used ARPA funds for to expand the winter warming shelter contract with First Pres at South Hayward Parish, but those funds have been expended, and so that means that we've gone from a very small allocation for a winter warming shelter to a full year of operations plus day center operations, and now we're in a place where we need to continue to support that program, but we don't have the $1 million a year that was coming from ARPA. Other projects that were in there was a program to assist land trusts or nonprofit organizations to acquire tax defaulted properties, as well as reducing barriers to rapid rehousing programs. All of those are things that would require funding that we were not able to do at this point. So tonight, we are here to seek your guidance from council as we reach the conclusion of the plan. It's a 5-year plan, so it's set to wrap up at the end of fiscal year 26. And so potential direction that you could give tonight could be, and this is not a comprehensive list, but some potential ideas for consideration, direct us to continue with the existing priorities that are in the plan, align more directly with the County Home Together plan, which was initially developed like right at the time that we were finalizing the Let's House Hayward plan, so we couldn't quite get on the same page with the county, but we pay really close attention to it. And our staff are part of the redevelopment teams to update that plan. And then, or it could be updating our own Let's House Hayward plan are some potential options. So with that, I'll conclude and turn it back over to council.
Thank you. And I just wanted to express a great deal of gratitude and thanks to Dr. Cole Bloom. You've really been the city's point person on this issue for several years. And I think your lens that you bring to this has really delivered the city's policy. And I know the executive director of BACS, she's shaking her head. The relationships that you have built between the city and our regional partners, has been phenomenal. I just wanted to thank you for that. And, and not to flex, when I walk into the mayor's conference, the Alameda County Mayor's Conference, and you're standing next to me, it feels pretty good because people turn to the city to look for guidance, and it's much in due of your work. So I appreciate that. Okay, this is a work session. So I'm going to open up to public comment. And let me see if there's anybody online. I do have one person online, so let me go to Teresa Resendez. Go right ahead.
Hi, good evening, Council. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. So first of all, congratulations on those of you who were reelected on City Council. I couldn't come to the party last week, but congratulations to all of you. So I just want to announce to the public there will be a meeting for the homeless committee this Thursday, I believe, at 5 p.m. at the second floor of City Hall. If you wish to come and voice your opinion or learn and listen from this committee, the meetings are only held about 4 times a year quarterly. So if this is something that you're interested and passionate about, I wanted to invite those of you who are viewing this meeting to attend. Thank you so much.
Okay. Next public comment is Vasco Yurgov. And then you gotta hit the button.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Red means go here.
Perfect. Honorable Mayor and Council, my name is Vasco Yorgov, and I'm an alternate to the Planning Commission, but I'm speaking to you now on behalf of House Hayward Now. House Hayward Now is a group of community members focused on ending homelessness and guaranteeing housing as a human right in Hayward. Homelessness takes many forms, all of which are devastating, but student homelessness is one of the most brutal. Since the start of the year, House Hayward Now has been facilitating monthly meetings with local organizations focused on how we can address student homelessness. We have brought together the Hayward Unified School District, South Hayward Parish, and Hayward Promise Neighborhood in regular meetings. This space has built connections between organizations serving our city, helping them find common ground in their work. As we had these conversations, we started to ask ourselves what the most enduring solutions to student homelessness could be. According to HUSD, there are 309 students experiencing homelessness as of October 2024. Of these students, 245 are in doubled up situations, which means overcrowded or technically unpermitted living arrangements that can easily spiral into a complete loss of shelter. A further 64 are experiencing literal homelessness, with 26 who are temporarily sheltered, such as in a family shelter, 15 living in motels, and 23 that are temporarily unsheltered, such as in their car or on the streets. These are heartbreaking numbers, and I really can't do justice to the tragedy of each of these stories here. But through our work with local service providers, we have identified 2 solutions we believe will have the highest impact to help these students and their families, and which we would urge you to add to the Let's House Hayward Now plan. The first, hiring a housing navigator to help students and their families find housing. The navigator would assess a student's situation and help connect them with the proper resources to get housed, as well as navigating the complex intake process of the coordinated entry system. Council could use its unallocated ARPA funding that is now part of the general fund to begin funding these programs, but sustaining support could come from statewide programs like CalAIM once the program is established. Suggestion 2, providing security deposit assistance. Security deposit assistance is a one-time payment that eliminates one of the highest barriers to being housed and helps build relationships with local landlords for residents. Paying thousands of dollars up front in addition to rent is often the final obstacle preventing families from finding a home. We want to highlight the work that House Hayward Now has done with local service providers as Council discusses the Let's House Hayward strategic plan, and we urge Council to direct staff to explore these solutions in 2025. Student homelessness may not be the most visible form of homelessness, but with a relatively low investment, we can make a tremendous difference in the lives of the most vulnerable in our community. Homelessness is easy to fall into and so hard to get out of. The easiest way to prevent chronic homelessness is to address it at its start. We can underscore that we are Education City and that we support our students unconditionally. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll go online here. I think this is Ro Aguilar.
Good evening, City Council, staff, and community members. I want to commend the council and staff on predominantly homeless, the homeless Let's House Hayward strategic plan initiatives, which really coincide with Amy's chart. So we're on the same page, Amy. Okay, so I commend continued operation of HEART. This program would be more successful. Oh, and then I'm going to add my comments. I'm going to commend and add my comments. This program would be more successful and effective if the city had access to hotel rooms for clients. A staff person could navigate relationships with nonprofit housing developers, the county, and landlords to work with the city on creation of hotel conversion projects by community-based entities. So by doing that, they're addressing the lack of action on the rapid housing program facilities and opportunities. And it may be that this initiative would focus on youth as a high priority, rapid housing program. Commend the support for development of St. Regis campus. Great accomplishment for 2024-25 as the city planning a similar rehab for next year. Collaboration on depot apartments, great for low and very low incomes, but we still need more for a homeless with no or minimal income. Okay, cross-departmental and cross-jurisdictional collaboration efforts, great. And that would be scattered sites housing. Let's amp up efforts with neighboring jurisdictions in the coming year So each city and county is addressing housing their homeless. Continued staff participation in regional efforts. Now, why not form a JPA or some regional organization to hold accountable those cities that are not housing homeless or building affordable housing? And then revisions in the municipal code, continue to pursue a shallow subsidy program, plus consider implementing a security deposit assistance program in 2025 to assist with housing on front end. Refer the one-time revenue policy to the Housing Policy Resources Committee for evaluation as a funding source for the rapid housing model using the lens of social justice. In closing, I encourage the city staff to develop more statistics and accountability for tracking how many homeless will be housed by this plan in the coming years, because we know roughly how many homeless we have. And I want to wish you all healthy holidays and continue this work.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Aaron Horner, the legendary. Welcome.
Wow, you turned the red on for me? She's that good. Everybody, Aaron Horner here with First Pres Hayward, South Hayward Parish, and Stack Life Church. First of all, I just want to say there's amazing people in this room representing the city. Wherever I go, I run into folks who have issues because they don't have all of the resources, all of the folks working in the same direction that we have here. I work in an adjacent municipality that does not have a heart team. That's amazing. They don't have an Amy or a Carol, Dr. Goldblum, excuse me, or Carol Lee. They don't have all of the city council members and our chief of police that is doing all the work that we're doing, working together to be able to address these issues. So I just wanted to shout out everyone here and just thank you all for all the work that you've done. I want to thank everyone who's come and met with me at Weeks Park, because this is a very serious issue at that specific location. I'm looking at many of you in this room that took time out of your day to come see what's going on over there. I do want to shout out BACS, Bay Area Community Services, for all the work that they're doing, and also the House Hayward Now group that I've been able to be a part of this last year, where we've been able to address some upstream thinking ideas around how can we prevent homelessness and how can we intervene in homelessness that's affecting our students. Last night we were at the Hayward Unified School District board meeting, and unfortunately in the 7 dashboard items that were reported, we are below the levels that are acceptable for the entire district. And the numbers for the young people that were at the lowest, the bottom of that, were unhoused students. So I just wanted to point that out. Those are the ones who are most affected in their studies and in their attendance, absenteeism, all of those things that are causing issues. So I do really enjoy the work that we're doing with House Hayward Now, to be able to work with the school district, to be able to work with other service providers to come up with some upstream ideas to prevent these things from continuing and be able to reverse those impacts. Also wanted to just point out the fact that homelessness really is a housing problem. I'm so excited that there's homes that were purchased in the city of Hayward. We got 35 individuals that are able to live in those homes. I'm so excited about the Navigation Center. That is a place where people are rapidly being able to get back into housing. But I will let you know that all of us service providers are struggling because we have so many folks and not enough places to send them. So thank you all for doing the work you're doing. I would ask that we would please continue this work. We would please to continue the strategic planning, continue to bring more and more service providers, more and more agencies here, so that we can work together to get ahead of this and realize that humanizing this issue, which is what is happening in this room, is the only answer. Thank y'all so much.
Thank you. Next speaker is coming to us, I don't know under what capacity, but I know she's a former council member, but also current director of the Hayward Area Park and Recreation District, Sarah Lemnon.
Thank you. I'm wearing the sweater for an item that was earlier on the agenda. Today I'm standing before you as a former director for the Hayward Community Action Network, a predecessor of Let's House Hayward, and who sounds like you're doing fabulous work, better than we did. So thank you for that. But I'm standing here holding that history with profound gratitude. I mean, where we are today, we didn't even think we could dream of that. The idea of a navigation center, the idea that, yes, the number has gone up, but that's because those are people that are seen in our community. That we have this team of people that are in the room today and a few that aren't, all amazing things. So huge congratulations to the city on all of that. And today, standing in that history, but also standing in the present, I ask that we continue this process. Stay with the strategic plan. The process was good. It was inclusive. It included people with lived experience in that. It's a voice that often gets missed, not in the planning and not in the intention, but in the implementation. And so not only staying with the strategic plan as it currently is, but also including people. This isn't the city's problem alone to solve. Together we can do this. The city doesn't have to convene the working group that includes lived experience. There are experts in the community who can do that. The city alone doesn't have to deal with vacant properties. The treasurer of Alameda County has interest in that. We could work together on that. HLAC exists. We need to have a conversation about Weeks Park. You know, in my history time, it was Portuguese Park. Today, it's Weeks Park. I'm not flinching from that, but together we can have that conversation, and not about finger pointing, but today, what pieces of the puzzle do we have, and together, how do we solve the missing ones? So I look forward to us continuing to work towards zero homelessness in Hayward. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Appreciate it. I do not have any more cards, and there is nobody else online, so I have to close public comment and come up here to the dais, and I believe I saw Councilmember Syrup.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, staff, for this report and for all the significant work you do around this incredibly sensitive area. I will preface my comments by stating the obvious, that homelessness is one of our city's and our residents' top issues. From resident surveys to our recent point in time count, we see that the challenge of housing folks remains one of our most difficult. Right now, we dedicate a significant amount of staff time across departments working to coordinate services, abate encampments that pose a risk to public health, and more. But we also know that abatement or sweeps don't solve the root cause of homelessness. Oftentimes, those encampments can pop up hours later in the same exact spot. And so as we continue to commit funds to local organizations that work to house our most vulnerable neighbors, and as we prepare to open a refreshed navigation center at St. Regis, or make adjustments to our zoning code to accommodate more affordable SROs, I want us to be addressing the root causes and to have a clearer focus and strategy on how we approach the housing and homelessness crisis. For a problem so complex, it's really difficult to know where to start, and our Let's House Hayward strategic plan outlines a really comprehensive approach to tackling this issue. I agree with Director Lamnin. The plan is comprehensive. The community did a fantastic job, and I want to thank everybody, including staff, that participated in contributing to make that a reality. However, resources are limited, and that plan is ultimately a wish list, right? This is everything that we know needs to happen, but if we want to actually make a dent in these numbers, we have to choose and prioritize where we begin and what we focus on within this plan. So I want to speak to some of the points that were made by public commenters from House Hayward Now tonight and from our local service providers, and also thank them for participating in these conversations for nearly the past year. I want to recommend that staff prioritize student homelessness as part of our strategy. And when I say prioritize, that's because it's already in the Let's House Hayward strategic plan. 1.1D and E called for us to formalize partnerships between the city manager's office, HUSD, and Chabot and Cal State East Bay for us to strengthen resources for unhoused school-aged children and their families, and to address youth homelessness. And both of these projects are currently not on track in our latest issuance of the plan. So this is not going to be a change to the plan, but rather a shift in our emphasis that I'm advocating for. Something that really struck me, and just give me some room for the long spiel tonight because I want to report back on a year of meetings. I was surprised that some of our partners were surprised by some of the services that they were offering. We all work within miles of each other, and yet it was surprising to me that some folks would say, "Oh, I didn't know you were doing that," or "I didn't know you were doing that." And this really highlighted the need for us to be in better coordination and in better communication with each other. Like one of the speakers mentioned, some proposals were generated that I would like for the city to consider, not necessarily as the person that has to fund it independently, or not as the person that necessarily needs to bottom line it, but for us to be in collaboration with as we try to pursue. These projects were prioritized based on how service providers perceive their level of impact, as well as the ease of implementation. And so just to reiterate the top two identified needs, dedicated housing navigators can help us handle case management for unhoused students and their families, following their progress as they're referred to between agencies, which oftentimes is how people fall through their cracks. They can also work to build relationships with hotel and motel operators to increase the amount of units that we can bring online for the emergency voucher system when people need temporary shelter. The other identified need was security deposit assistance. A majority of Americans don't have more than $500 in their savings account, so it shouldn't be a surprise that they can't save up enough to get a rental unit of their own. Having security deposit assistance actually incentivizes a healthier relationship between tenant and landlord because it creates an incentive for a healthier relationship by the time their lease expires. I'm also of the opinion that this is more effective than solely having rent subsidies, which to me are essentially direct payments to landlords because the tenant actually benefits at the conclusion of their lease from a security deposit assistance. I'll end my comments here by saying I believe that a focus on student homelessness and research into pursuing these proposed projects is aligned with our interest in being an education city. It's aligned with developing a desire for us to focus our resources to actually solve issues rather than just address them because we're spreading ourselves so thin, which I think has been a reoccurring theme throughout this year. As many of you already know, housing has an impact on student educational outcomes, future earning potential, property values, student enrollment and absentee rates, school funding and whether or not our schools can stay open, crime rates, and more. HUSD already has numbers on their unhoused McKinney-Vento student population, meaning that this approach would be data-driven. It would be scoped and provide a focused population where we can partner with other agencies and pool resources rather than working in silos. As was previously mentioned, homelessness isn't an issue specific to the school district or the city, so this focus will allow us to develop healthier and more robust working relationships with our partners in the jurisdiction and improve our ability to coordinate better. If we're unable to solve this problem for our students, then we're gonna have an even harder time solving it for everyone else. But I think with the right focus, and I know we already have the right team, we can truly make a dent in this. So I'm curious how this vision and some of the comments were received by my colleagues on the dais. I'm curious how staff feels about this shift in focus and whether or not it feels feasible with everything else on your plates, and how we might be able to work these programs into a future iteration of the strategic roadmap in partnership with our neighboring agencies. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Roach.
Thank you. And thank you for everyone for your public comments. I mean, I know we have so many partners out there doing this work, and I appreciate Councilmember Syrup's comments that, yeah, whatever we can do to coordinate and bring all this work together is obviously going to serve, serve our city, serve the unhoused population, and hopefully relieve some of the pressure that everyone's trying to just be an island in solving these problems. So, so thank you to everyone doing that work, and to Dr. Colbloom and your staff. I just appreciate what you're doing out there, and our city staff and our first responders that are doing the compassionate work, trying to find solutions to the unhoused that they're trying to meet with out there, find medical help, find housing, and move them ultimately to shelter. So my comments were along the same lines as Councilmember Syrup's, that it's true, we've got limited resources and we all come up with new great ideas, and I do want to make sure that we're using them in a really specific way. So one thing I would ask before we add new things to the budget going forward, when we talk further about what solutions we're really interested in, is kind of it doesn't even have to be a really detailed, but an audit of what is the most, and I don't mean this to sound callous, but bang for a buck in that, like, for example, the Navigation Center. So 61% of people going to the Navigation Center are moving to permanent housing. Like, that sounds like a great outcome. So what, is that a great outcome? And what is, what can we do to make sure they have continued funding so that we don't lose that ability? Same thing with South Hayward Parish. I mean, we were talking about, so they have funding. Is it just right now that they only have funding for the winter program and there's no funding for the year-round program? Is that right?
We have identified ways to give them funding for some operations, plus they're using SSA money, and I would look to Aaron if he wants to fill in the gaps here. I know that we have significantly reduced the amount of funding that we're giving them, but it's more than the $25,000 a year we were giving them for winter warming.
Okay.
They were getting about 1.3 when we expanded, and now I think the contract we're working on is like 400 and something. And Aaron's team is pulling together additional resources to fill that gap.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, just, would that be, if we have a partner in the community doing this great work so we're not creating new programs that we're trying to spread thin. I mean, to Councilmember Cyrus' point, like, would it be better for us to come up with a more, consistent funding source for what they're doing in South Hayward Parish? Because I like some of the ideas that people were talking about, even the idea of, for example, a housing navigator. I mean, that sounds great, but is that really the best use of our money for the city to do, or do we partner with the school district to do such a thing? And, we provide some sort of, seed funding for them to be able to get funding from other sources. And security, same thing, security deposit and assistance, that also sounds great, but we have limited funding. So I think what I would like to do going forward is and I know you must have these numbers, what are the outcomes for the funding we're putting in there so we can streamline it? Because we all individually come up with great ideas. Let's come up with safe parking. Like, that is something that works. We know it does. But if we really don't have the funding and we're going to, allow, 20 people to park a night, is that funding what we really want to be doing, or do we want it to go to South Hayward Parish to continue doing what they're doing, or do we want it to go to the Navigation Center? So I think going forward, I would like to see some of these items go forward in our strategic planning, but I really want to know, what I'm asking, like, where is our money really going, and what are the outcomes that are really?
Yeah, when council adopted the ARPA expenditure plan, we sort of picked kind of one from each bucket of the emergency shelter, transitional housing, and prevention. So there were some other projects funded, but it was emergency shelter was expanding South Hayward Parish to year-long plus day center hours. Transitional was contributing to the Navigation Center, but that was a one-time allocation. And then the prevention was piloting the shallow subsidy program. In terms of the bang for your buck question, like on a philosophical, like kind of like modeling level, we've got partners at All Home, which is a Bay Area-wide, I'll call them a think tank. I don't know what to call them at the moment, but they're really well-informed partners. And they did some modeling, and what they concluded was they kind of presented forward this 4-2-1 framework. So for every 1 unit or whatever dollar investment that you make in emergency or temporary housing, you need to make twice that investment in permanent housing and 4 times that investment in prevention. I think a lot of what we're doing right now with the Navigation Center, with what South Hayward Parish's team is doing, is temporary shelter. We are getting people housed. We are not stopping people from becoming homeless. That is the biggest problem when you look even countywide at the data, is the prevention side of things. So in terms of things that work, I mean, in-room housing works. Like, we need to bring people indoors. But we also know that working with landlords to help keep people housed, the work that the housing division does with rent stabilization, tenant relocation, those things work. Programs where we have a lot of partners like Abode and Bax who work closely with landlords to case manage. Downtown Streets does this too, to help people stay in their homes. But financial investments on the prevention is what will stop people from becoming homeless. And then, of course, there is the big bucket of there isn't enough permanent housing. Construction of affordable housing is not my wheelhouse, but our Deputy Director of Development Services is here and she can speak to that more. But every time we're trying to get folks into shelter, candidly, we're putting a Band-Aid on a pretty gaping wound that is an affordable housing crisis.
Yeah. I know. Okay, yeah, I mean,
Did that answer your question?
No, it did, thank you. I mean, it just, obviously highlights to everyone listening, everyone here, just how complicated this issue is, and I agree with you. I think prevention, and, maybe that does go back to the student, housing topic, is, like, to know what people are, maybe not the homeless student population, but to work with the school district to know families that are potentially, at risk of being in house, like, maybe that is a bigger focus we need. We need to get that in a bigger focus, because you're right, prevention, is going to be the way to go. So I won't take any more. I appreciate your work. I mean, I look forward to continue to do, to see how we can, move resources, even though they're limited, and it's a lot. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Bonilla.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you so much for this report. I do share the mayor's sentiments that the work that we're doing to address homelessness in Hayward so purposefully, so coordinated, and in such a meaningful way is really a model for the rest of the region. I know the work that I do countywide in this space, Hayward is really looked to as a model. I mean, we're meeting some of our arena numbers. I know our pit count went up, but that's just really a sign of the times. Homelessness is something that's increasing, that takes a regional approach. It's very complex to deal with, and you outlined some of those complexities in your presentation. So I thank you for that. I also appreciate, this plan being a community-informed prioritization tool that will help us be able to attract funding, apply for funding at the state and at the federal level. And it's an agile plan that I think has a variety of options that will allow us to be able to have a pretty comprehensive toolbox to be able to address the issues that are impacting homelessness in our community, but I also understand that it's unfunded. But I think because of the breadth of the plan and our determination, we need to be purposeful about finding those funding sources, because I do believe they're out there. I actually have several questions, but how are we moving people from shelters to long-term housing? I know that you talked a lot about the great work we're doing in shelters, but as you had said, shelters aren't the ideal place for people and families. So I guess, what are we doing kind of in that nexus of connecting people to, some sort of longer term or more permanent or stable housing when they're in shelters?
In terms of what the city is doing specifically, so we have contracts and fund the programs that are doing the transitional housing, and so we work closely with those providers. If it's okay, can I invite some of our nonprofit leaders are here? I would invite them to add to this, but what I know is happening from like the navigation center perspective is that it's taking a lot of time. That we have folks who are at the Nav Center for a really long time, not by any reflection of their behavior or anything to do with them. It is, they're looking for a permanent housing option that fits, that works for them. And it's not a reflection of the effort made by staff. It's truly a logistical issue. I think that, to use Bax as the example, they have staff who manage relationships with landlords, who know that there are landlords who will rent to somebody with a Section 8 voucher. And so they do that kind of work. I would invite, Bax CEO or ED, Jamie Almanza is here, and Aaron is here as well from First Pres. Would you like to add anything?
Why don't the both of you come and sit up at the front? I'm evoking my teacher voice and having you come to the front of the class.
In trouble. I'm kidding. I first want to say thank you so much to the mayor, to the council, to the city manager. Multiple people have said it tonight. City of Hayward is a model city, and Bax works in 7 counties, and so probably 30 cities. And I'm not saying this just because I'm here. Your plan and your execution of your plan thus far has been phenomenal and successful and efficient, and has actually gotten up probably the fastest. So you have most of the components in the plan. I'm hearing a lot about prevention tonight, targeted homeless prevention. BACS runs Keep People Housed, and that is a model where you could provide a security deposit, or you can provide, 1 or 2 lapsed months of rent to keep a household inside. And it uses a targeted system because nationally there's evidence-based data. We can now predict who is most likely to fall into homelessness based on criteria. So the number 1 criteria, if you've been homeless before, you're most likely going to be homeless again. So our Keep People Housed program, which is regionalizing, and Alameda County, they just had their Board of Supervisors meet tonight, and they did pass Measure W, which will be $390 million. So a portion of that will go to targeted homeless prevention. A portion will go to interim housing, and a portion will go to permanent housing. You have the St. Regis coming online. That is going to be 254 beds. And of those 254 beds, 80 of them are going to be for medically frail individuals. And so imagine older adults who also have medical frailties. With the Navigation Center, of course, those are successful outcomes. We've been running Navigation Center programs since 2011, the exact same model. It's called the Housing Fast Support Network, and we're in Oakland, Berkeley, Hayward, and Fremont, and in Fairfield. And what we're noticing is exactly what you heard, which is when we started running these programs, the length of stay was about 6 months. The goal is to get someone in and out of interim housing into permanent housing, because the evidence shows that the longer someone stays in interim or institutional housing, the more they become institutionalized in that housing. So to answer your question, how we do it. So we have 10,000 landlords in our network, and we work with landlords across the greater Bay Area. And we utilize flexible funding, so that's part of the model. So we can use funding for maybe first and last month's rent, maybe a small titrated rental amount. And there's really 2 tracks of our individuals, our community members who are experiencing houselessness. There's individuals who are in an employment track, and so we embed supportive employment services and work with our partners. And then there are people on a permanent disability track, and that takes 4 to 5 years to get in our area. And once you obtain that, it's about $980 a month. And so that's where you're really looking at for people on permanent disability and really fixed incomes, you are looking at roommate matching and shared housing. And I was incorrect, and I apologize. We bought 8 houses in Hayward, not 7, so I just wanted to clarify that. The state also recognized the city of Hayward and Union City for being the first multi-city application that went into state home key and got approved for scatter site housing. So all to say, I couldn't be in my 14 years at BACS doing the work I'm doing. I need to come to more city council meetings like this because I go to other ones and I walk out with a different spirit. So I just commend all of you for your leadership, for your staff. I just can't tell you, you have the best staff. We meet weekly, and I if you said it at the beginning of the meeting, just the staff and your leadership and governance and oversight make me believe that the city of Hayward, even though the pit count went up a tiny bit here, and it went up in the sheltered space, which is in some ways good news, right? That does not, it was small, and we haven't implemented these very large interventions that we, someone's talking to me on my phone, which should tell me to be quiet and pass on the microphone. So I just want to say thank you very much, but think about what St. Regis has all of these resources and can work with the individuals that we're working with every day on the streets, doing street outreach and working in the camps with. And I really believe the city can get to a functional zero through your efforts and through your strategy. So thank you very much. It's an honor to be able to work with the city of Hayward.
Thank you.
And I will pass it on to my colleague. Thanks for calling out Max earlier.
Always.
Should we put the 3-minute marker on Mr.
Yeah. Actually, I'm going to ask the ushers to come forward, please, for offering. Don't get me started, Mr. Mayor. All right. It is a very complex issue. Homelessness is extremely complex. I appreciate you, Councilmember Bonilla, for bringing that up. And what we see is, and working with BACS has been great, because we can only do things within our scope of work, right? We can only do the things that we can handle. They can only do the things that they can handle. But with our coordination, we can accomplish more, right? The one thing that we're seeing, and this is proven not just here locally, but around the nation, that humans need their basic human needs to be met for them to be able to rise. We can't pull anybody anywhere. So some of those human needs are food, shelter, hygiene, relationship, community, safety, belonging. These are human needs that we all have to have for us to be able to grow. So what you find is, in a shelter space, that's important. In a navigation center, that's important. Folks that are moving into permanent housing, with the assistance of both of our agencies working together, I just had a guy tell me last week, I would like to apply for housing, but I don't know if I want to live alone again. And that one just hits me. That one just had to stick with me for a little bit. We're asking people to move into a place that we determine for them, where they don't have those supports. So it takes a long time. It takes a lot of support, and we don't have enough housing. So it's not like somebody fills out an application, something comes in. It's not like those of us that are applying it in for-profit spaces. These are housing units that we're fighting for. And there's a national low-income housing commission that does a report across the country. And it says that if we're lower than 35% in a community of people that are lower than 30% AMI, if you're following that math, for units that we have available, then we are going to be in a serious problem. California just scored less than 27% on that report. So we do not have enough units. There's not enough places to send people, right? So that's complex. Two, study just came out this past year. Actually, on September 11th, there's a bunch of studies coming out, but this study just came out and demonstrated that in shelter spaces, we're seeing twice the number of utilization, twice the percentage of utilization of services and engagement for folks that are unhoused than folks that are on the street. We have an amazing street team here. I don't know if you guys have ever had to call. I know, they tell me they know these two names in the room right here, that call them regularly. Hey, we've got a complaint, there's a person out here. They show up that same day, try to find that person has moved on. But in shelter spaces across the country, they're demonstrating that folks are able to gain access to resources. They're able to hold on to their IDs, their social security numbers, their cards. They're able to get their DD-214s for veterans. So we need to have a place for people to come to gather, and that's part of this Home Together 2026 plan. That was the original plan to utilize the Measure W funds, which I'm really glad is now going to become available. In that plan, if you notice it, there's a 4-year strategy. We increase our shelter spaces, and those also meet people's specific needs. So you have specific populations that are not being met right now. For example, me and Mr. Bonilla, we were talking about the folks that are the highest risk, right? Folks highest risk in an emergency are not necessarily the folks on the street, right? It's the folks that are not able to navigate. And some of those people are the aging population, right? So we need to have shelter spaces that support that. We need to have additional supports, right? Like we do in medical spaces. We'd also need stuff that's gender appropriate and gender safety related, right? We need those spaces. We also need places for families. We've talked about that. We have an amazing provider in this community that we didn't mention yet, FESCO. There's also Ruby's Place. There's many places that specialize in working with those families. I'd love to bring them to the table. They should have a voice in this combo. But they do great work. They need to be resourced even more, and then that would create space for us to eliminate these issues that are happening from our students being impacted by homelessness. Another one, human need is healing. Healing from the trauma. Being homeless, not having a place to go each night, not having your hygiene available, that is traumatic. It's been proven that actually is now a traumatic trigger for people that are not able to have a place to stay. And we have a great, I'll tell you, I've met with many of our officers. We got Sergeant Cosgrove in the back. We have our police chief. They do great work in being able to connect with individuals and seeing people as a human being and treating people, trying to get them into services. However, everybody can't be everywhere. Right? And that's why we're talking about Portuguese Park in the past. We're talking about Weeks Park. We're talking about downtown Hayward. All of these communities are impacted because we don't have everyone's basic needs being met. So, Councilmember Bonilla, I appreciate you bringing up the fact shelters are not the long-term result, but they are necessary as an off-ramp from the freeway of homelessness, because without that, we won't be able to move on. Last little thing I'll tell you to answer a question earlier about money. It does cost us about $1.3 million a year to run that shelter. Our current contract is for $447,000 with the city of Hayward. We've been able to find another 5 different funding sources from the city, from the county, from the state, and also federal sources to be able to generate revenue to be able to fill that gap for this current year. We're in serious trouble for next year. I just wanted to put that out there. And then just point to that Home Together plan. And then the county has also published a plan called the 10-year housing plan that demonstrates that we need to increase to 2,200 additional shelter beds in the county and 98,000 additional below market rate housing units. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Go ahead.
Thank you so much, the both of you, for your great and thorough explanations. It's really great to have partners like you in the community that are working with us to solve these issues. Clearly, you're passionate about this topic and you have a lot of resources to bring to the table. So thanks again for your partnership. And the main nexus for my question was because I've heard of other jurisdictions that are limiting the days that people can be in shelter. So I was kind of just thinking about like this revolving door thing. If you're limiting someone to be in a shelter for like 45 days and you don't have somewhere else to send them, then you send them back onto the street. But it doesn't sound like Hayward has those kind of hardcore day limitations on our shelters, which makes a lot of sense, and I'm happy to hear that. And then, we heard that there's about 25% of the homeless population in Hayward is considered chronically homeless. So I'm glad to hear that St. Rose is going to come online, not St. Rose, but St. Regis is going to come online, and it's going to be able to really provide the array of services to deal with the chronic issues that keep these people, these community members unhoused. I was also thinking about, as we were thinking about all these things on the plan about being unfunded, I was thinking, okay, well, we get in lieu fees, so would it make sense to apply some in lieu fees to some of this? But then I was like, no, because if we're saying the real issue is we need more permanent affordable housing, that's what our in lieu fees are going to be for. So I think I just kind of answered my own question that says, leave the in lieu fees allocated to where they are.
You did.
Okay, good. Okay, moving along with my remedial training here. So I also appreciate that, like I said, this plan is really going to be used as the nexus to be able to apply for state and federal funding, which is, I think, where we can draw down a lot more, money to be able to make an impact here. As it relates to the student homelessness, 309, it seems like that's a real kind of defined population that we want to work with. I do appreciate everything the public and council member Syra brought to that discussion. So what I would like to see is, how that might be able to be prioritized and how we might be able to leverage like HLAC or other regional groups that we have to be able to tackle the issue, because I do think that all of our agencies have something unique to bring to the table to deal with this issue. So how we kind of convene and work together to prioritize that, I think, would be a really good issue for, that group to handle, since Hayward is represented there, but it also brings in some of our other partners. And then the other thing that I really appreciate and I want to encourage is making sure that all of the decisions that we're making are informed by people with lived experience, and the people with lived experience are those that are representative of the people who are experiencing homelessness. So I'm really happy to hear that we're doing that already, and I just want us to continue to make sure that we're centering people with lived experiences and the solutions that are ultimately being built for them. And then you asked kind of specifically about our recommendations. My recommendation is to stay moving forward with this plan, but I kind of want two recommendations. I want us to stay moving forward, but then I also want us to make sure that we're aligned with the county, because I also understand the leverage that can be brought with that county and with that regional alignment. I think we heard, that we were one of the agencies who got some funding because we did a multi-agency application. I know HUD likes that, and so do a lot of other funding agencies. So making sure that we're aligned with the county, I think, is important. So that would be my direction here, and then also looking at how we prioritize student homelessness as a joint kind of effort across the agencies in Hayward who have resources and who have an interest in prioritizing that. Thank you. Great discussion tonight.
Thank you. Councilmember Goldstein.
Thank you. Great report. And, it's really been such an amazing experience to be part of a city that not only cares but demonstrates that caring, and to have partners in the community. All of you, I'm pointing to all of you because all of you show up as wanting to do something, able to do something, and you're carrying on the effort. And without you, we wouldn't be able to do this. So a couple of questions. In reading through some of the documentation from people with lived experience in this area, one of the things they talk about is the lack of coordination. So I know on the Community Services Commission, we fund, what's the number, 42 different community partners-ish? Yeah, I might be off on the numbers, but it's a pretty big number. But also, I went out to Weeks Park with Aaron and met some of the folks that are living out there, and just hearing them describe the steps that they have to go through to make any kind of progress in their, whatever it is that they're working on. One fellow lost his job because his work permit expired. And so, anyway, you can imagine. And so what I'm wondering is, do we have a coordination plan in place, and do we have people who actually do that coordination? So I know Aaron and his staff tries to do that. I'm sure the folks at BACS do that and do that well, but they're only representative of, maybe combined between them, half, if even, of the total population that needs our services. So what are we doing relative to coordination?
On a city level, we have, and I can't speak very specifically about this, but the Youth and Family Services team has a behavioral health coordinator who does that for folks with behavioral health issues, some of whom are experiencing homelessness, but it is not the answer that you're really looking for. From a city side, we don't do that type of coordination for folks who are homeless. We rely on our nonprofit partners to navigate that. So we do provide funding, like you're mentioning, through the community agency funding process for folks who do case management, who do that work. The LINK team, again, does this for folks who meet the criteria, and some of them are homeless, but it's not everybody that they serve. So they do some of that case management. So in terms of like direct staff who work for the city, the LINK team does that to an extent. But we primarily do it through contracting with nonprofits who take care of that navigation.
Okay, I sort of thought so. And at the national level, what some providers are talking about is that although there are these great service providers that do things, the lack of coordination means that there are great numbers of people who fall through the cracks, not for lack of resources necessarily, but for not knowing how to access those resources. And so what I would like to see the city do is to evaluate how coordination might better serve the needs of our community. And I think some of the feedback we might get might actually be having, if it's a person or a group of people who are doing that level of coordination, they might be able to tell us, well, we have some duplication of effort over here, and if we just align the resources a little bit more in this direction, we might be able to get some greater impact. So in any event, I'm just encouraging you to, consider coordination as a key goal.
I should also add, and I would again look to our service provider partners for this, because I don't have access to, there's privacy concerns, so I can't go to these meetings, but there are coordination meetings of service providers who sit and go on a by name list of folks. So those who do have some sort of touch with the system, that service provider will sit in a room with other providers and talk about what they're getting access to. Also, providers have access to the Homeless Management Information System, HMIS, which is a massive data system, and if anybody gets touched by a homeless service provider, that information gets into the system, and you can look somebody up and see where they've been. So those systems are in place, but I hear you on the city leadership on the coordination side.
I see, okay, and that was partly my misunderstanding about how our partners can, and I'm assuming that all of our partners can access that would you call it HMIS?
I'm gonna let Aaron Horner talk a little bit about HMIS.
Okay.
Try to be real quick with this, but HMIS stands for the Homeless Management Information System. It is a requirement for any municipality that is receiving HUD funding. So anybody that receives that funding has to be in there. You have to enter all of your data. There's portions of it that are unique to each provider. There are portions of it that are shared across all providers. Each month there is a coordination meeting. It's regional, so it's a mid-county coordination meeting hosted by the Healthcare for the Homeless through the Alameda County Health Department. They go through the top 150 names. So I'll just say, I know for the unincorporated area and the city of Hayward together, there was 891 individuals on the last point in time count. And so each month we go over the top 150. So those are folks, and they're ranked based on need, and that has a criteria that is able to rank people based upon specific criteria that's determined by HUD. So that's where we're able to coordinate. So if I was able to go in there and I could look and I say, this individual is in a safe parking program in the city of San Leandro, I could contact that case manager and I could speak with that case manager and we can coordinate that way. But there are a lot of issues with it. And it is not a perfect system, and not everybody gets into it, and not every agency has access. But yeah, the ones mentioned tonight do.
So I think then maybe the vision that we want to put on this is, where are the gaps and what can we do to fill the gaps? And I think ultimately we want to have in place a way to measure the effectiveness of the variety of programs we have and make sure that we're efficiently allocating resources, right?
Yes.
Okay.
If you're asking me.
I know you do a great job, by the way, Aaron. Yeah, really appreciate you, brother. I think perhaps, it breaks my heart to think 309, was that the number? 309 that we know of. Sure, I know, and some people will hide out of pride. Sometimes their families will hide out of pride. But it's a known fact. We know at least 309 people, students, right? And these are high school and college, just high school, HUSD overall. So, okay, that's a pretty big number, but it's also a manageable number. We have resources and we know people, right? We can put people together. So maybe we can come up with a plan to figure out this year how to address housing for 309 students. I know I know you're completely overworked already, and I didn't mean to just pile on a whole bunch of stuff. I don't know how we're going to achieve that, but I would like to be part of that solution. So you guys invite me into the conversation, okay? I want to do something. All right, I don't know what else to say about that, but I think maybe it's coordination, maybe it's something else, I don't know. But we definitely need to look at it, and I think starting with the students is the right place to do that. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Zermeño.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Amy, very much for the very good presentation, good program, good comments, good organization. Thank you to the public commenters, and for the work that you do. Madam Bax, nice to finally meet you. Very good. I have no questions, just some comments. Over on page 3, we speak about the goals of formalizing, increasing, and ensuring having residents housed as much as possible. I think those are tremendous goals. Please keep those up. And then over on page 2, we talk about these measures are meant to reduce homelessness. And I think that's an important word, reduce, because unfortunately, I don't think we can ever solve it. I don't think we'll ever have enough housing. Even the state has accepted that we'll never build enough houses to house every person who is unhoused. And I've been to South Hayward Parish when they've had cold nights, rainy nights, and I've run into individuals there who said, leave me alone, I'm fine, and they went off into the rain. So we have some folks who would rather not have an organized setup in a particular place, whether it's a navigation center or whatnot. So we need to accept that. But the goal of reducing is tremendous, and that's what we need to work on. So the priorities that you have set up and that we're working on are tremendous. We also need to make sure that we work regionally, not just in Hayward. So we work with our other municipalities, Union City, San Leandro, and also, of course, Alameda County. The one in all of the strategic plans that I saw, the word that stood out was funding. So I do have one question. How are we doing in that particular respect? So do you feel that the new administration in Washington will loosen up some funds? Do you think Sacramento will loosen up? How is that looking?
There are currently new funding sources coming down from the state. I can't speak to the federal government at this point, but we are keeping an eye on some state funds. There is, I think, quite a focus on housing for folks who are homeless with behavioral health needs. That's really where a lot of the funding for the development of housing is right now in the homelessness space. I think that we're keeping an eye on those programs. They continue to be really hard for Hayward to make it work on a grand scale because of the local match requirements and the sustained operating requirements. Tomorrow's, I can't remember the name, Housing Policy Resource Committee. The name changed while I was on maternity leave, and I need to have it just on a Post-it. That group is meeting tomorrow, and we are doing a presentation about the city's RFI for some funding for Home Key Plus, which again is looking at behavioral health housing for folks who are homeless. That's kind of my sense right now. Measure W was brought up by our partners. Measure W was adopted in 2018 and has been tied up in litigation since. So there's millions of dollars that have been collected and sitting in escrow. And so the Board of Supervisors, it sounds like, acted tonight to adopt a plan for how to spend that money. And we are paying very close attention to that. And we are deeply engaged with county staff to understand how those funds will be used and how we can leverage them for Hayward.
That's good. That's very good. We've done well. I think I received comments from folks saying, Francisco, the city of Hayward is doing a good job on this particular aspect and this issue. We've come up with 7 programs. Last time we met, we approved a tenant relocation assistance program, and now we have these strategies. So this, I feel good about what we're doing. I think eventually we will have a good low number of unhoused folk and residents here in Hayward. Funding, of course. And Bosco over there mentioned students, and of course 309, and then at Chapel College, they're called couch surfers, and I have several of those in my classes. And it's sad to see they don't have the opportunity to study well. They don't know where to study. The library is full. So if we can work on something to deal with the students. And you mentioned something related to that. We really don't know who is in danger of becoming homeless, unhoused. We really don't know that. And now we do.
Yeah, we do. There's been a lot of research on what pushes people into homelessness, and so we can really create programs, prevention programs,
Okay.
that will serve those most likely to become homeless. It is one of the unfortunate silver linings of COVID is that we got a lot of data and a lot of understanding. BACS operates the Keep People Housed program. We use that model for our shallow subsidy program. So we know that folks who are extremely low income, who have been homeless before, and who are severely cost burdened, so they're paying 50% or more of their income on rent, those are folks who are most likely to become
Okay.
homeless. We also know people of color also,
All right.
and people who are living in like high eviction neighborhoods.
So we have 170,000 residents in Hayward, and we have a list somehow. We can tell
don't-
that
we don't
John
have like
Smith is going to probably be.
We don't have
It's
a bi-
great if we
No,
have that.
We don't have a named list.
Okay.
We have a data set of folks who received emergency rental assistance. This council acted really quickly at the start of COVID and got an emergency rental assistance program going right away before the state passed down any money. And so from that, we had, I can't remember at this point, like 800 folks who got rental assistance. And we used that as a data set to initially target folks for our shallow subsidy program because we knew from that data if they'd been homeless before. So we had that, but that is just limited to the folks who knew to apply for rental assistance in May of 2020.
Okay. If we can find a way to identify those people, it'd be tremendous. I receive emails, can you help me? My race has increased. And then I give them the 4454 number, which is Christina's number, to call her and see if she can help out. It kind of reminds me of the conversation I had with the real estate industry folks when they said, Francisco, what are you doing to help out the small mom and pop owners of rental properties? And I said, well, who are they? Can you give me a list of who they are so I can help them out? And of course, that's when they shut up because they don't have a list. So how am I supposed to know who the small mom and pop owner is? And apparently they also could be producing unhoused individuals. Let's see, okay. Difficulty, I really want us to continue working with this. And the minute we get some funding, let's put some money into it. We spoke earlier today about affordable housing projects, and those are coming online. Our reading numbers, we need to get those up. But I'm very happy with what we're doing, and I thank you, and keep working on it.
Thank you. Councilmember Andrews.
Apologies for my tardiness. I'll explain why in the council member comments. It's for a good reason. Thank you for the staff report, because I wasn't here for the complete presentation, but I did read the staff report. I did submit some questions prior, but I just wanted to make a couple of comments and have a couple of questions. So I did meet with Aaron Horner at Weeks Park and wanted to know how that working group was going, and can we see this as a model for other locations throughout the city?
I think the working group model can work in other locations, yes. I think that the challenge with Weeks right now comes down to we're kind of navigating some enforcement questions. So it's a really positive working relationship. We've got all the right people in the room, and we're working to kind of understand, I think, so what we're currently doing in a lot of our encampments is encampment cleanup and abatement. And we're not really doing that in the same way at Weeks right now, and so we're having conversations around what abatement looks like. We can talk at length about the difference between abatement and resolution. Encampment resolution meaning that the answer isn't you get displaced from this camp or you get whatever from this camp, you stay here until you have a place to live, a permanent place, and that's a really challenging thing for the community members, for us, for everybody. That's a tough solution to reckon with. And so we're having some conversations around that, but it's a challenging decision, and I think council input on that would be wonderful.
Okay, and then if we could figure out an update to when that is going to be back to council to just review of maybe there's some support we can look at, figure out on the council level in terms of guidance, that would be helpful, but also other locations. Really want us to also look at A Street and near Caltrans and Union Pacific properties and see if we can partner with those organizations to find some solutions for folks, because these areas have been coming up. I know it's been quite difficult working with other agencies. Is that something that we can look at as a future item?
Staff are actively engaged in that, in engagement with Caltrans, Union Pacific, and BART.
Okay, great, thanks. And then I did see the higher representation of the African American population as part of the data, which was also the last time you brought this up, and previous years have brought this up. It's been an ongoing issue throughout the region, and wanted to know if we are working with Black-focused organizations. Some of the feedback I've heard from people who use these services feel like some of the names of the services aren't for them, whether it's services that are trying to prevent them from homelessness, whether it's just access to resources. They feel like the names are really more for other groups. And so I just wanted to see if we are working with organizations that might know this population to help it.
So I know what organizations you're talking about that have those names, and one of the things that we do on a staff level is when we engage with folks, we explicitly say, this is a program for you, this is a service for you, you will get legal services here, you will get shelter and care here. We collect, so on the community agency funding side of things, which is the annual process by which the city gives or allocates out, it ranges, but around $2 million. We collect race and ethnicity data from the agencies about their makeup, and we can look at that again this year to see, at least on the executive level, and as well as I think we get staff, like organization-wide race ethnicity data to see the racial ethnic makeup of the agencies themselves, if that's something that we do collect that information.
I would be interested in that, because if we continue as staff to say these services are for you, but they continue to feel that it's not, then we need to talk to an agency that does. So I would be interested in seeing a list of names for that. And let's see, I do want to learn more about Measure W. So if that's something that you could just shoot us an email, but also if you want to give a little bit more info, that'd be great.
I don't right now, because council or the board just adopted that today, but I do know that they're looking at kind of a three-pronged approach that's similar to what we're looking at with permanent housing, interim, and prevention.
Okay, great. All right, and then I will continue to press on this, and I know that people keep hearing this from me. I won't say tired, but keep hearing this from me, is that I really want to figure out how do we get 24-hour mental health support and keeping that in a focus. Maybe it's a long-term goal, working with the county. I did have a mental health emergency on my street. It happened at 9 p.m. So we need to figure out how to get 24-hour support, because mental health does not stop at 8 p.m. And also wanted to just acknowledge that police and fire were very respectful, but it would be nice to continue to have that support, knowing that when we call, that is going to be the response. So is there any way we can highlight that this is still a concern?
Other than like us saying, yes, we hear you, that it's still a concern? What are you looking for?
Is there a path? Is there a discussion? Is it a possibility? I just want to hear that there's somewhere towards it.
I mean, we've looked at, so in response specifically to that feedback at last year's HEART work session, we increased the funding that we make towards our motel voucher program. And we've also are contributing, part of the funds that we're getting into contract with First Pres at South Hayward Parish are to reserve beds for the HEART population, if you will.
Okay.
And so those are our recommendations because we cannot, the way that HEART is set up, it's reliant on other service providers being open and operating, which is why the 24 hours doesn't work. So what we've identified is when patrol gets a call at 9 p.m. for someone who's unhoused, and if they meet the eligibility criteria, we can get them a motel bed for the next few nights while Link comes and engages with them. So we've set up that kind of a system.
Yeah. No, I appreciate the creativity in their approach, and as long as it's happening, that's great. And so, if we continue to find those solutions, that's awesome. So, thank you. And then wanted to see how has the equity work been applied to this, given that my previous question was about this population. How is the work internally being applied?
We haven't reevaluated the racial equity lens on the Let's House Hayward plan since it was developed. Part of our practice as a division and as a city is collecting data and evaluating data on race and ethnicity to understand, are we actually serving the folks who we know in our PIT count are overrepresented? So we collect all that information from all of our service providers, and it's part of our review, and we follow up and ask questions, but it doesn't, I would say that's kind of the extent to what we're doing right now.
Okay. Are there any discussions about doing more, or is this that's how we're going to look at it?
Not currently, no.
Okay. All right. I would just check in with our equity officer to see just a review of what she feels could be helpful, especially in terms of the first question I asked.
Yep.
I want to continue to press on inclusionary housing, and also continue the work on making sure our affordable housing ordinance is strong. Interested in hearing more about Home Key Plus and those types of programs. And then also wanted to make sure that when we do the inclusionary housing, we're also including amenities that will also benefit this population as well as the surrounding population. So right now, I think the Mosaic is a great example of how this is working. Like, we have some great housing near a park. We have new amenities underneath housing, and then affordable housing units walking distance from each other. The affordable housing first floor is still empty though. So trying to figure out how do we find something that's going to benefit that population. And I understand there was discussion of something coming in, but it's been a while. So if it's not going to be something that is going to attract commercial, is there an amenity that is with the housing to help this population? I think will be more effective. Is that something that we can also look at?
That's not something that's in my shop, but I would look to, we can, yes. I'm looking at Deputy Director Christina Morales.
Okay, yeah, whether it's like a co-working space, something that will benefit folks in the building would be really helpful, but also it will activate the space so we can keep eyes on the street. So those are all my questions and comments. Thank you.
Thank you. I was, well, before I say something, you said 10 seconds.
Yes, I'll be super brief. I just wanted to make a few more points. Okay, so I wanted to also emphasize, I support us looking into the city having a housing navigator, especially after hearing some of my council colleagues' comments and then kind of hearing some of our responses. I do think that it's important. I know that there's kind of the broader coordinated entry that happens at the county level and with, the providers that we were talking about here, but I really do think that it would be unique for us to look at how we have a housing navigator really help kind of manage and case manage folks through this process, especially, considering how closely we're able to sort of manage and use data to inform, the progression of people through the journey of, homelessness into housing.
Is that specific to the student population or housing navigation in general?
I want to say housing navigation in general.
Okay, because we definitely have that.
We do.
That is what the Navigation Center is, and that's what those staff that work at the Nav Center do. So the Navigation Center has outreach staff who are out in the field engaging folks, doing coordinated entry assessments, trying to get them on the wait list for the Nav Center. Yeah,
Okay.
and then the case managers and folks who work at the Nav Center, they are housing navigators.
Got it. Okay. So I wanted to, because I thought we didn't have any, and that was my concern. Okay, but I still would like to see the city perhaps work with HARD and the school district to see how we might be able to jointly fund something temporary or something more permanent around housing navigation for students in particular, since I think we heard that from our colleagues up here. As it relates to Councilmember Andrews' comment, I think that her comments really highlight why we need people with lived experience and decision-making roles around this system that's being created. And when I had said people with lived experience that represent the community, I'm kind of speaking directly to what she's talking about, right? I don't know if we need to go to all these organizations. We need to go to the people directly who are trying to have, consume these services and get them to inform how we talk about it, how we market it, what we call it, and those kind of things. So I really do want to double down on our commitment to make sure that we're centering people with lived experience in our solutions. And one of the ways that we can do that is we can actually require some of the folks that we're funding to demonstrate that they have people with lived experience on their board or in decision-making capabilities for programs that the city is particularly interested in for the people of Hayward. And then lastly, I am very excited about Measure W. I was on the leadership board of Everyone Home when we worked to get that passed. So I was sad to see it caught up in all the litigation, but I'm happy to see it move forward. But I also understand that that money is, controlled by the county. And I also understand the money is pretty substantial, and I understand all the committees that are being formed around it. But whatever we can do as policymakers to help push and influence the county to make sure that Hayward gets our fair share, please do whatever you need to do to leverage us in anything regarding that. And then my last comment, I promise, on this topic, but the county, under Everyone Home, when they published their new strategic plan, they were very purposeful on recentering that plan through a racial equity lens, and I know that our plan is tightly aligned with that. So I do think that we've taken race and racial equity into account in some of the decisions and programs that we're putting in place. And I do echo Councilmember Andrews that whatever we can do to continue to make sure that we're centering all of the work we're doing in this space through a racial equity lens, I think it's only going to be able to make it more impactful. And those are my comments. Thank you, Mayor, for the second bite.
Councilmember Syrup.
Thank you, Mayor. And I just wanted to echo a lot of Councilmember Bonilla and Andrew's comments here. I do think, the Let's House Hayward strategic plan was drafted before the HART program existed. So I am curious the ways in which, HART as a coordinated strategy is part of or could become part of the strategic plan, or if that feels appropriate. It is? Okay.
There was an activity in the strategic plan to implement I'm not going to get the language right, but basically programs that came out of the Public Safety Innovations Workshop that look at behavioral health and homelessness.
Okay.
And we put that in there because we knew that HART
yeah,
was hurting.
Something was coming. Okay.
And so that's what that was. Yeah.
Got it. Thank you. And then just to the point around housing navigation, I understand that we're contracting with housing navigators, but I think there's also this desire to maybe have better coordination with those navigators specifically alongside other service providers that we contract with. And so I know you've taken a lot of questions tonight, but I think after my long tirade earlier, I didn't have an opportunity to hear from you kind of your thoughts on the idea or what implementation looks like from your perspective, kind of getting towards the goal that we're putting forward, particularly around student homelessness. But I don't want to prescribe anything that's unreasonable.
I think that I would look to you all. You have upcoming work sessions on the budget and on that work in terms of what the city can do financially to support that work. I think in terms of coordination, we have some capacity to provide some support and we have some relationships that we can leverage. I think that HLAC is a place that makes a lot of sense for this work. I think that HUSD has the expertise in their student population and all of the resources in terms of reaching out to them, that type of thing. I don't know what they have in terms of their contracting and working with nonprofits in that way, and we could provide some technical support there. But I'm a little nervous to say anything more here on what we can do. I am not saying that we can't collaborate with HUSD in any way, and I think that focusing on student homelessness is absolutely an important thing to do. I would also say that the majority of emails that we get, that you get, are about the very visible unsheltered homelessness. And I want to just, it's a tough thing to balance that there are 23 truly unsheltered student families, and we also have hundreds of unsheltered adults who are the folks who you're also seeing every day. So I'm not trying to weigh one against the other, but I just want to remind you all that like the focus on student homelessness is important and valuable, and we also have this other population who you all get emails about and who we get emails about too, that the community is concerned about.
Thank you for those comments, and I appreciate how you started it by saying it's kind of incumbent upon us to provide you with the necessary funding and support you need to do this work more effectively. So I know we'll take those comments into consideration as we approach the next budget cycle.
Thank you. You know, this issue, is important. We've been talking about this for an hour, right? And I mean, it just shows you a work session. And I don't even think we're done, with this. And so this has always been, a heavy item. I had a question and a real brief comment. The question is, how far along are we with the SIAC Center, with the development being built over there on Tyrell? Do we know what the...
Do you mean, is that Covenant House?
Yeah, the Covenant House. Is it open or?
I don't think it's open. This is the Newcomers Navigation Center.
Yeah.
I know that they're providing services for newcomers. I don't think that site has opened. I feel like they would have invited us to. It's I'm looking at Christina.
Yeah,
it's the Covenant
Home
House
where they were,
project. Yeah, I can look into that.
Okay, I'd like to.
We fund Eden's newcomer programs, but I don't know the status of that site.
Okay.
I can look into
It'd be
it.
nice to
Unless
get a.
you want to be.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, I did talk to Covenant House, and I think there's something with development, so I think someone might want to help support them on the development side.
And PG&E.
I was trying not to say that, but.
Okay. Okay.
A utility.
Okay. Okay. That was the question I had, and then, the comment. I just want to. I generally agree with everyone was saying. I think we've been pretty united as a council in this space. The direction that you are going, the direction that has been articulated in the report. I think we're all in agreement to that. And so I think we're on the right track. So I'll stop there. But I also, I just want to make this comment about, the student focus, and I appreciate your professionally light pushback on us on that, and I get it. But my comment is this. Is that I've been working with students for a long time, and all of you know that. Over the years, I guess the experience that I have had is, I think the city has stepped up in very big ways to, support and generate housing for all Hayward, for families with kids. Hayward Promise Neighborhood, who I worked with for many years. We, did a lot of focus around family support, child support, and so forth. And my only advice when we talk about students, particularly up here, my only advice would be this, is that if we are going to hold ourselves accountable in this space in responding to unhoused students, we also have to hold our colleagues in other bodies accountable, like the Hayward School Board. We have to hold them accountable. They have designated dollars for unhoused students, right? Designated dollars. The Alameda County Office of Education, right? They too are responsible for students, and they are by law have to respond, to students. And I think a lot of the boards, the board members and trustees of these other bodies, they are just as innovative, they are just as creative as we are and as we can be. And I think, when housing folks come to us, and when advocates come to us and sort of move us and try to get us to respond to these issues, I don't see the same tone, tenor, and velocity and accountability, mostly accountability in these other bodies. And we got to hold them accountable, period. And I say that. Hey, listen, I have friends and colleagues on the school board. I have friends and colleagues on the Alameda County Office of, the Alameda County Office of Education. I'm not throwing them under the bus. I'm just saying, just as we are held accountable to these issues, I think they too share a big responsibility. This is their space, right? And so I'll stop there on that. I should also let you know that, one of the conversations I've been having with the Chabot Las Positas Community College Foundation is we have been talking about ways in which to house community college students at Chabot. And, part of the discussion is, is doing it, right? There are some, in order, if we are going to respond to these issues, there are policies and there are actions that have to get done. For example, let's talk about taking a parking lot at Chabot College, carving it out for housing, right? Let's talk about, another conversation that we have talked about, seems to be like a third rail conversation, but, the whole west side of campus, where we begin to look at Ochoa Middle School, and how much of Ochoa Middle School do we carve out to plan out student housing, where we can have student housing, family housing, and community college housing. And so, these are conversations that, these are innovative, these are creative, but it takes action. I mean, that's what we've been doing up here. And that's why when I say if we're gonna hold ourselves accountable, if you're gonna come to us and hold us accountable to this, we should be at the Chabot Las Positas Community College Board. We should gotta be at the school board, Alameda County Board. I always like to bring up this issue because, up here, and I know our deputy director, Morales, was very much intimately involved in this. But, we built, we approved, and we built in partnership with Eden Housing, 176, 100% low income, very low income housing right above Tennyson, in a very premier real estate lot in the city. 176, 100% affordable housing. And we attached a school to it because we wanted to see families, we wanted to see teachers, and we wanted to see administrators live in the same place where school was at. And it was a third rail conversation, but the school that was slated to go into that building got rejected, And it was rejected by the school board, it got rejected by the Alameda County Office of Ed, and I don't know if there is a suitor for that shell right now. We've built the housing, we've built a school. And so we are doing our part. I think we are doing our creative work. We are doing the innovative work. But we need our colleagues that we share this space with to be bold like us, right? We need them to be innovative like us. And so if my colleagues hear this, and we just finished an election, and so we have some innovative thinkers that have been elected and reelected, and so I think we need to consistently keep them accountable for these kinds of things. And so, anyways, I say that, and I'll stop there. But I know this work is important, and I think this goes without saying, again. But I think we have really been at the forefront of this. Yes, we have put feet on this fast. And the reason why we've done it fast was because we have an emergency, right? We have a crisis that needed a response to. And I think that that's what we've done. And I think we've met the challenge. And it shows. I mean, when we have third-party objective people telling us that we're doing a great job, I think, that are experts in the space, telling us that we're doing a good job, I think I'm pretty satisfied. Dr. Cole Bloom, thank you very much for your work. And
may I repeat back to you what I have heard as our, like in terms of our general takeaways for this?
Sure.
I just want to make sure I've got it. So I'm hearing in response to our question about the direction, I'm hearing a couple different things, but generally, we don't need to do a new from scratch strategic plan. We can move forward with the priorities we've got. There's a desire to do some further looking at student homelessness and what we can do with our partners.
And while working with our policy partners in that space.
Prioritizing our bang for our buck and aligning with the county as we move forward. That's kind of high level. Are there anything?
And I would also add to continue working with the Alameda County Mayor's Conference, because I know we have developed a plan for short-term and long-term coordinated work. I mean, a lot of the work that we're trying to do is do interagency, intercity coordinated work. But yeah.
Yes, and then one last thing, I just have heard a lot about folks like what services we provide. I want to make sure everybody on council and listening in the community knows about Alameda County has housing resource centers located throughout the county. The mid-county for our region is in Hayward. It's at 590 B Street, and it's HEDCO. So if you haven't heard of HEDCO, if HEDCO is new to you, it's a housing resource center. It's where folks it's a walk-in center. You can be homeless, you can be at risk of losing your housing, and you can go in there. BACS operates it, but those are operated by the county and a really important resource for folks who are at risk of homelessness or who are currently unhoused.
Great.
And then I think the only thing is also being intentional about making sure that we're centering racial equity in all of our strategies.
Thank you. Yep.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you, your team, Deputy Director Morales, always. And happy holidays to you and your team. Thank you. Okay. I'd like to close this session, move on to item number 14. Which is sort of really shifting gears here. Electrification reach code, adopt a resolution finding and determining the need for adoption for modification to the 2022 California Building Standards Code, introduce a revised electrification reach code ordinance with amendments related to EV charging and finding that action is exempt from CEQA. And the interim city manager promised me that Mr. Pearson has a solid, concise, 5-slide presentation. Actually, I don't think it's 5 slides, but
I think it's a few more than 5.
Yeah,
But wait,
I know, it's
he
fine,
promised to be concise.
Okay, Mr. Pearson, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. Okay. Good evening, Mayor and Council and community members. So staff presented the proposed REACH Code ordinance amendments to the Council Sustainability Committee on November 18th, and the committee voted unanimously to recommend adoption by the Council. So the REACH Code is a local ordinance that amends the state building code. Our current REACH Code took effect in January 2023, and our current ordinance modifies the state building code to require 3 things. First, that all new buildings be either all electric or electric ready, and then to require electric vehicle charging infrastructure above and beyond state code requirements. So the item number 1, which is the all electric requirement for residential buildings, is no longer being enforced due to a court decision on the Berkeley gas ban that occurred earlier this year. So the state updates the building code known as Cal Green every 3 years. The next version of the code, known as the 2025 Cal Green Code, is going to take effect on January 1st of 2026. California also makes minor changes at the intervening cycle or the halfway point in each 3-year cycle. So this year's intervening cycle changes took effect on July 1st of 2024. Many of these changes are related to EV charging. And so this new Cal Green code, even with the updates, in most cases, still requires less EV charging infrastructure than our current REACH code. So in addition to ensuring consistency with the intervening code amendments that took effect in July, staff recommends also incorporating minor changes to the EV charging requirements in the recently adopted 2025 Cal Green standards that are going to take effect in January 2026. Including these minor changes from the 2025 Cal Green in the updated REACH code will eliminate the need for us to update our EV charging requirements again in 2025. Before I get into the specific requirements, this slide shows the 4 power levels. All of the Cal Green and REACH code requirements are for low power level 2 or high power level 2. So low power level 2 charging is a 20 amp circuit that can provide 10 to 15 miles of range per hour of charge. And a high power level 2 circuit usually uses a 40 amp circuit and can provide 25 to 30 miles of range per hour of charge. And then also there are 3 kinds of readiness. There is EV capable, which means that a parking space has allocated space in the electric panel and it has conduit to the outlet location. And then EV ready also includes the electrical outlet. And then the third is the EVCI, meaning electric vehicle charger installed. And this is sometimes also referred to as EVCS for electric vehicle charging station. So first off, for single family and 2-family townhomes, we're not recommending any changes. Our REACH code will still be more stringent than the upcoming Cal Green requirements. The new code differentiates in multifamily. The new code differentiates between assigned parking and unassigned parking spaces. The proposed requirements would match the state code and would require that all parking spaces that are assigned to residents must be EV ready. And then for common use parking, spaces must have at least 25% of the spaces must have a charging station, and then 75% would have to be low power level 2 EV ready. For hotels and motels, the percentage of spaces with chargers required would increase from 15% to 25%. And the number of spaces that must be low power EV ready would increase from 25% to 40% in order to match the minimums in the new Cal Green code. For non-residential buildings, our code is still more stringent than the upcoming 2025 code requirements. However, there is a new distinction that makes it so that retail is subject to the same requirements as offices and other non-residential buildings. So minor amendment there. And then I would like to acknowledge we did receive an email this evening at about 6 p.m. The email is in opposition to the REACH code. However, it does not address EV charging requirements. It primarily addresses the topic of natural gas use and building electrification, neither of which are part of the proposed amendments. So staff is recommending that council receive public comment, receive and review and comment on the report, and then adopt a resolution introducing the revised electrification REACH code and finding that the action is exempt from CEQA. And I'd be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Are there any questions from council? Seeing none, moving to public comment. Is there any public comment? Let me see, check anybody online. There is no public comment online. There is no public comment in the chamber. I'm going to close public comment and I'll entertain a motion. Yes. Councilmember Andrews.
I wanted to move the item and just wanted to say that our committee had extensive comments. So It includes Councilmember Roach, Councilmember Zermanio. So if folks want to go back and look at that meeting, we did talk a lot about this item. So.
Great. Moved by Councilmember Andrews, seconded by Councilmember Roach. Comment on
Yes,
on the
I'm
motion.
second, and I just want to make a comment. Thank you, Councilmember Andrews. Yeah, we did have a great discussion about this on our Sustainability Committee with Councilmember Zumino, and we had a lot of questions. I mean, I think the bottom line is Hayward is trying to be more aggressive than the state code, so I think we were comfortable moving forward with the way things were, and just that we had some questions going forward, but I think we were unanimous in our decision in moving forward.
Great.
So thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Seeing no other questions, I'll ask the city clerk if you can please take roll call.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Councilmember Andrews?
Aye.
Councilmember Bonilla Jr.?
Yes.
Councilmember Goldstein?
Yes.
Councilmember Roach?
Yes.
Councilmember Syrup?
Yes.
Councilmember Cermeño? Mayor Salinas?
Yes, and it unanimously passes. Thank you. Moving on to item 15, fiscal year 2025 salary plan adjustment. Adopt the resolution approving an amendment to the City of Hayward salary plan for fiscal year 2025. This is going to be a report from the Human Resources Director, Fry. I am going to forego staff report and come straight to dais for questions of staff. Councilmember Syrup.
Is Director Fry online, or?
She should be.
Okay.
Yes.
My understanding, yes.
Yeah, there she is.
Got it. I just wanted to clarify, I was unable to attend the Personnel Commission recently as liaison. Was it this or the following item where there was a disagreement from the commissioners?
So the commissioners did not agree to move forward the salary plan for a vote. And so that is this item.
Understood. And would you mind explaining some of their rationale?
They did not feel that they had enough information regarding the city's budget to make a decision for moving the salary plan forward.
Okay, thank you. I'll save my comments for after public comment.
Okay. So if there are other questions, Councilmember Andrews.
I just had a question of Director Fry.
Yes, go ahead.
Did she have any feedback to the reaction to the Personnel Commission's comments?
I was not in attendance at the Personnel Commission meeting last week. I was sick, and so I was not present. I was briefed on the meeting and understood the comments to be that there was not enough information that they had available to them regarding the budget to understand the salary plan in a way that they felt comfortable approving it and moving it forward.
Okay, and do they normally review the budget prior to this?
They do not.
Okay, all right, thank you. And is there a path forward? Are we looking at a path forward on how this can be resolved in the future?
Yes, so as part of the retreat that we've done with the Personnel Commission, what we did and discussed partly with the commissioners was their role in the salary plan and the approval process. Part of what we moved forward was a consent calendar item because of this fact that the commission didn't feel that they had enough information, and it was more feeling like a rubber stamp of approving the salary plan by the time that it got to them in the process. Part of what we talked about was moving it to a consent calendar, which we did as a prototype for this meeting. This was the first consent calendar that we had, but this was in fact pulled from consent. And the comments that the commissioners had was that they did not feel that they had enough information to move forward. So as part of the process of education with the personnel commissioners, we do have outlined education that we plan to provide commissioners through our quarterly meetings. One piece of education is during our first quarterly meeting of the year would be to provide education on all consent items. So the hope is that as we provide education on the salary plan and the commission's role in approving the plan, that will be helpful to their understanding.
Okay. And then do we have any commissioners present tonight?
No, I don't see any.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'd like to close the questioning, go to public comment. I don't have any cards, and I don't see anybody on, let me see. I don't see anybody online, so I have to close public comment, and I'll entertain a motion.
I'm happy to move the item, but I'd like to make a comment in response. So first, I just want to thank the commissioners for voicing their opinion. I think we've asked them to do something difficult this year. They've looked at several union contracts get approved and not really have insight into the impact this is going to have on the budget. And it's not necessarily the core function of their role, but they're trying to be good residents, good citizens of the city by saying, wait a minute, does this make sense for the city as an organization? I don't feel comfortable approving this as an appointed commissioner if I don't have enough information. So I don't want my line of questioning to be perceived as a grievance. I appreciate their attention to detail and respect for this process. As the liaison to that commission, I'm happy to move this forward. I'm grateful for the work that Director Fry has done in helping us go through a retreat process to focus the commission more on tasks where they can have more of an impact. And I hope that the commissioners trust us as their representatives, knowing that the contracts that we negotiated and the approval of the salary plans do have the residents' best interests in mind. So with that, I'll move the item.
Moved by Councilmember Syrup.
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Roach. And Madam City Clerk, before we take the vote, I wanted to also thank Councilmember Syrup for his work on the Personnel Commission. I appreciate that. Madam City Clerk, if you can please take the roll.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Councilmember Andrews? Aye. Councilmember Bonilla Jr.?
Yes.
Councilmember Goldstein?
Yes.
Councilmember Roach?
Yes.
Councilmember Sarah?
Yes.
Councilmember Cermeño? Mayor Salinas?
Yes, and it passes unanimously. Thank you. Moving on to item number 16, unrepresented salary and benefits. Adopt a resolution amending the salary and benefits resolution for unrepresented employees. From this report will come to us by way of our Human Resources Director, Brittany Fry. I am going to forego staff presentation and I'll come straight to questions amongst council. Seeing none, I'll close council questions, go to public comment. I don't see anyone in the chamber, and I do not have anyone online, so I have to close public comment and I'll entertain a motion. Moved by Councilmember Goldstein, seconded by Councilmember Syrup. Madam City Clerk, if you could please take the roll.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Councilmember Andrews? Aye. Councilmember Bonilla Jr.?
Yes.
Councilmember Goldstein?
Yes.
Councilmember Roach?
Yes.
Councilmember Sarah?
Yes.
Councilmember Cermeño? Mayor Salinas?
Yes, and it unanimously passes. Next item is item number 17. It's the city manager. Adopt a resolution appointing Ana Alvarez as city manager of the city of Hayward effective January 9, 2025. Approving the employment agreement between Alvarez and the city of Hayward, authorizing the mayor to execute the agreement. And this report comes to us by way of yours truly. Just real briefly, May 4th, 2024, former city manager Kelly McAdoo separated with the city of Hayward. She went to as the city administrator for the city of Santa Barbara. And immediately thereafter, we started working with a consultant, Arthur Murray and Associates, to launch a recruitment. Bob Murray, sorry. Did I say Arthur Murray? Yeah, Arthur Murray is a dance. Yeah, it's a dance school. Yes, it's not It's not Arthur Murray. It's Bob Murray. And we immediately went into a recruitment. It was a national recruitment search. And we went through a process. It was an 8-month process. Today is the conclusion of an 8-month process. And so Dr. Alvarez comes to us today. We have appointed her. It was so we have appointed her. The contract is included in the staff report. And it is very similar to the contract that we had with Ms. McAdoo. And so what I'll do is I will stop there and entertain any questions from the council. Seeing none, before you do that, I'd like to close questions from the council and open it up for public comment. Let me see. I don't have any public comment cards. I don't see I don't see anybody online, so I have to close public comment, and then I'll come up here to council and see if there's any other last questions of council members before we proceed. Or comments, if you have comments. Council member, I'll tell you what, why don't I just go down the line, and I'll start with Council member Syrup, and I'll just come here. Council member Syrup.
Thank you, Mayor. Obviously, we've put a lot of work and thought into this decision, so I will be supporting the item for whomever makes the motion tonight. I wanted to first say welcome to Dr. Alvarez. We're really excited for you to be representing the city. We did not take this decision lightly, and I'm excited to be at the conclusion of this process and see what the next chapter of Hayward's future looks like. I want to say thank you to my colleagues. This was my first time doing an executive search at this level, and I appreciate the level of professionalism and candor with which we debated and thought through what it looks like for us to help direct our city, knowing that this is one of the most important decisions we can make as a council. And then lastly, I just want to thank Interim City Manager Dustin Clausen. You helped us steer this ship through a pretty difficult 8 months through districting and every other challenge that the city throws our way on a day-to-day basis. And I just really appreciate your candor and your communication style. And you are a true asset to this city and this community. So I just wanted to express my heartfelt gratitude to you for your work. Without belaboring the point too much, because we've already been in a meeting for 2.5 hours, I'm excited to have you on board, Dr. Alvarez, and look forward to working with you.
Councilmember Goldstein.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, welcome, Dr. Alvarez. This has been a very vigorous and interesting process that we've been working through. And none of this has been taken lightly. This was done with in-depth thought. It was challenging for a number of different reasons, and yet at each and every opportunity that we had, we were able to probe, looking for answers, and you delivered magnificently. And our faith in the process, our faith in each other as, challenging each other to do the best that we can for our city staff, and for our residents, leaves us with every feeling that we have made the right selection. And having said all of that, also I need to say that, Dustin, you have done an outstanding job steering this ship for the last 8 months. Your confidence, your ability to get things done and to see things through has been outstanding. And so I think it'll be great for you two to be working together. There's some great complementary skills I see they're developing, and I will be happy to vote in favor of this. And again, welcome, Dr. Alvarez.
Thank you. Councilmember Andrews.
Thank you, Mayor. I wanted to thank the committee that put this together, the search committee. I don't know if we're so I just want to thank the mayor and Councilmember Roach, as well as Councilmember Goldstein, for really guiding us through this process. So I want to thank you for all your hard work. I want to thank Bob Murray and Associates for finding outstanding candidates. I want to thank all the candidates that applied. You bring a lot of special skills to a lot of different communities that you all work in, and just wanted to thank you to everyone that put their name in the hat. It is a very scary thing, and you all made that brave step. So I just want to make sure that you all are being acknowledged. And then I just wanted to thank Dr. Alvarez for submitting her name and making sure that this was a community that she actually wanted to go to as well. And we look forward to working with you. We look forward to seeing what Hayward can be under your leadership and working with us. So we are very happy to have you come on board. And I want to thank Mr. Clausen. This has been a journey, and I want to thank you for making sure that Hayward stays afloat. And we look forward to seeing what you do next for our community. You're a valuable member of the Hayward community, a valuable member to the Hayward staff, and I look forward to seeing what's next out of your different divisions under your leadership and your continued work here. So thank you so much.
Councilmember Bonilla.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to say welcome to our new city manager. And to the community, this was a very extensive search that we conducted. As the mayor, is probably going to say in his marks, so I won't, copy him too much, but he always says Hayward deserves the very best. And we went out and we hired the very best recruiter. We conducted a very extensive and what I consider to be one of the best executive searches that I've been a part of. And I think we found one of the very best leaders right here in our own community to come and lead the city into the future. We're very confident, I think, as a whole body with her unique background and the innovative approach that she's going to bring to address Hayward's distinct needs and drive progress forward in our community. We're excited about your leadership. I think that you have everything this community needs, and you're such a gift to all of us. So I think as we go into the holiday season, the one thing that we can be thankful for is the great work of everyone that was involved in the process and the great work of Dr. Alvarez. I know she likes to be called Anna, but I mean, we're going to have one of the only city managers in the county that has a PhD, that has level of expertise this deeply in what she's going to come and bring to the city. And I think her unparalleled experience matched with the passion of the city council and I would say in the direction of our community is going to make Hayward's future brighter than it's ever been before. But I know that Hayward has a bright, we've been a beacon of light for our residents and for our community during this transition. And, to lead an organization this size in an interim period amidst all of the different changes and dynamics of a city this complex is no easy feat. So I also want to recognize the great work of our interim city manager, because it's not easy to step into a role and to perform so well and to have the city seamlessly operate during that interim period. So to you, interim city manager, thank you for everything that you've done for the city. I look forward to seeing Dr. Alvarez, where you're going to take us together and how together we can make Hayward a place that everyone can call home and that everyone can thrive. So thank you so much for your willingness to be here, and I can't wait to see all of the greatness ahead.
Thank you. Councilmember Roach.
Thank you. Yes, welcome, Dr. Alvarez. I'm so pleased you'll be joining us in Hayward, and I pledge to do whatever I can to make your transition as easy as possible. I also want to thank Interim City Manager Clausen for your leadership during this time. It was sort of an uncertain time when Kelly told us she was moving on, but you kept us moving forward, and I really appreciate everything you've done, and it's been fun getting to know you better on this level. Thank you, Dustin. I also want to thank our City Attorney Lawson for his leadership during the process as well. His guidance was very helpful as we were moving through the contract negotiations. So thank you, City Attorney Lawson. Finally, I want to thank Assistant City Manager Regina Youngblood, who started us on the process, helped us vet and find Bob Murray and Associates, and my understanding she'll be integral in the transition process as well. So it was a city team effort to get us here. Thank you also to my colleagues on the CAOC, the mayor, and Councilmember Goldstein. It was a long process. It was a big vetting process, and I appreciate you sticking with us, Dr. Alvarez, on this. And I look forward to the new leadership in the city. Thank you.
Councilmember Zermeño.
Thank you, Mayor. It has been mentioned, it has been a very good, tough, rough 8 months, but I think we did very well. We had the leadership, the advice of a good consultant, I believe. And we are convinced that the collective decision made by us was a good one, was the correct one for our fine city. So welcome to Hayward, to the Hayward family. Bienvenida a la familia Hayward. Dustin, I really appreciate what you've done for us, not only for these last 8 months, very difficult time, but it's tremendous that you kept us together, especially going through this district business. It's important that the Hayward boat keeps afloat and going down the stream in an excellent position. The whole staff, from Michael to Miriam to you, has been tremendous, and I really appreciate that. So I am convinced that all of you and our staff and our new city manager and all of us up here are going to be working very well together to ensure that Hayward moves correctly forward. So I thank you all. Muchas gracias.
Thank you. Before I move this, I did want to read, I did prepare some comments on this. I want to start by expressing my sincere thanks to everyone for their patience throughout their process. The committee, of course, was Councilmember Roach and Councilmember Goldstein, but I also wanted to thank the council. The last time we undertook this process was 20 years ago. 20 years ago. So the council understands the significance of this decision. We really understand this decision. As outlined in the city charter, the city council is responsible for 3 employees, 3 appointments: the city clerk, the city attorney, and the city manager. And while each of these positions carries significant responsibility, the city manager holds the critical role when it comes to the day-to-day operations of the city. The city manager is the chief executive officer of the city of Hayward, tasked with implementing the city's priorities and managing the day-to-day functioning of the city. This role is one of the most public-facing and vital to our community. The city council has approached this decision with the utmost seriousness. Together with our consultant, we carefully reviewed qualifications, experience, and leadership qualities. While the council makes many important decisions, hiring the city manager, without question, is one of the most significant decisions we make. And we make this decision tonight with confidence. I want to take a moment to express deep gratitude to our interim city manager, Dustin Clausen. Over the past 8 months, he has shown remarkable leadership. His steady hand has kept the city moving forward while ensuring that we remain focused on our priorities. On behalf of the city council, the staff, the residents of the city of Hayward, I want to thank you, Dustin, for your dedication and your hard work for this city. I really do. Thank you. Tonight, the council announces the appointment of Dr. Ana Alvarez as the 14th city manager of the city of Hayward. Dr. Alvarez brings with her 33 decades of experience in local government and special district administration. Born and raised in Mexico City, she embarked on a transformative journey to the United States, where she pursued higher education. Her academic path began at a California community college. She continued on to a California State University and culminated with the attainment of a doctorate in policy, planning, and development. When we speak of pathways from education to career, Dr. Alvarez stands as a living testament to that journey. Her story echoes the aspirations and experiences of countless children and families in our city, in our community, a reflection of the very essence of what we hope all of our kids and families achieve. Her start date will be January 9th, 2025. A more detailed press release will be issued following this meeting, but I wanted to personally welcome Dr. Alvarez to Hayward and to our team. I would also like to thank the selection committee, Council Members Goldstein and Roach. I also want to thank the entire City Council for your patience and grace through this process. This was not an easy decision. It weighed heavily on us for 8 months. Lastly, I want to thank the entire City of Hayward, the organization, our dedicated staff from across all departments. Your professionalism and commitment have been instrumental in moving this process forward. And with that, I'd like to move the item.
I'd like to second.
Moved by Mayor Salinas, seconded by Councilmember Roach. Moved by a lot of people up here. Madam City Clerk, if there are no questions, you can take the roll.
Mayor Salinas, I believe there's one comment online.
I will go to a public comment and Ro Aguilar.
Good evening. I know it's late. I wanted the community to also welcome you, Anna Alvarez, and as a community members, my husband, Glenn Kirby, and I welcome you to Hayward. We're looking forward to working with you with an open mind, and we wish you good luck.
Thank you. So I'd like to close public comment, and then Madam City Clerk, if you can take the roll.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Councilmember Andrews.
I welcome.
Councilmember Bonilla Jr.
Absolutely.
Councilmember Goldstein.
Yes, welcome.
Councilmember Roach.
Yes.
Councilmember Syrup.
Welcome to Hayward, yes.
Councilmember Cermeño.
Simon.
Mayor Salinas.
Yes, and it passes unanimously. Congratulations. Welcome. Next item is council reports and announcements. And seeing no reports and announcements. I didn't see any. Did you see any, Councilmember Bonilla? I didn't see none. Councilmember Andrews, did you have something to say?
Thank you, Mayor. Apologies again, and thank you to staff and mayor for allowing my tardiness today. But I was actually coming from Sacramento on federal business, as I had the privilege of submitting the electoral vote for Congressional District 14. As you're aware, we have 270 votes for the Electoral College, and California has 54 votes. And I want to thank Representative Eric Swalwell for the opportunity, but I was proud of our state for demonstrating a peaceful transition of power demonstrated today. I also wanted to thank Mr. Charks, Mr. Corver, and Mr. Brass, who are my high school government and history teachers, because I used what I learned today. So thank you again to my colleagues for excusing me, and also wanted to extend a thank you to Alameda County Board of Education trustee Aisha Knowles for joining me, as she was my alternate, but also very important as being part of this historic occasion. So thank you all.
No problem. Anyone else? Seeing none, I'd like to close that. There are no council referrals. The next meeting will be, December 24th meeting and January 7th meeting are canceled. The next meeting will be January 21st, 2025 at 7 p.m. But I also wanted to take this opportunity to invite the community on January 9th here at City Hall in the Rotunda at 6 p.m. We will have a formal swearing-in ceremony for Dr. Alvarez. And so come early, get a seat, and we anticipate it will be a lot of folks. So, and with that said, wanted to wish everyone a happy holidays, enjoy your break, and if there are no other business, meeting adjourned.